Meet the BAIC B30 hybrid electric vehicle, which promises to bridge the gap between the hardcore off-roading B40 with massive BF Goodrich all-terrain tires and the city sleeker that is the X55. So it is incredibly comfortable around town, but has just enough ground clearance and an all-wheel drive system to tackle soft-core off-roading without breaking a sweat. This is the top-spec B30 Premium Adventure Hybrid, which by the way was one of the official G20 convoy vehicles, alongside the Jetour T2. So in this video, I will tell you all about this presidential carrier's features, its driving dynamics, and what it'll cost to run on a monthly basis. I will also show you a Springbok cam chair, but more on that later. So without further ado, let's get started. Car Talks. Power, precision, performance. Now, your comments on my X55 review requesting me to review the B30 are the reason that this review is happening in the first place, because BAIC saw your comments and well, they gave us a unit. So whatever vehicle you'd like us to review, put it in the comments section below, because OEMs are always watching these videos and you never know who's watching. Moving right along. Powering the B30e is a 1.5-litre 4-cylinder turbo-petrol engine paired with self-charging dual electric motors, producing 301 kilowatts and 685 newton meters of torque. Power is sent to all four wheels via a dedicated hybrid transmission. Curb weight comes in at a smidge under 1.8 tons, and it'll do the 0 to 100 km/h sprint in 6.9 seconds. It looks cute and small on pictures, but this is actually quite a big vehicle. And during the time I had it, I parked in between a Haval Jolion and a Land Rover Discovery Sport, and the B30 towered over both of them. So based on its size and specifications, its most natural rival would be the Jetour T2, as both are unibody mid-sized off-roading SUVs around the 700,000 Rand mark for their top specs. Although the B30e is a lot faster than the T2 we drove a few months ago, but that was an ICE model without any electrification. Since then, Jetour have responded with a plug-in hybrid variant of the T2, but it only has 265 kilowatts, which is still less than the B30's 301 kilowatts. But once I have the T2 plug-in hybrid on test, I will then provide my remarks in terms of how these two compare to one another. Admittedly, the HEV models of the B30 don't come with a spare wheel, so I was a bit reluctant to take it off-roading. But my fear of getting stuck alone with punctured tires was overcome by my curiosity of how this would actually perform off-road. So I requested BAIC's roadside assistance team to be on standby, and I did it anyway. So let us take a look at how good or how bad of an off-roader this is and unpack what's underneath the skin. First things first, the B30 has 215mm of ground clearance, which is more than enough for soft core off-roading. For reference, the Suzuki Jimny has 210mm of ground clearance, and it is an exceptional off-roader. The all-wheel drive system has 4 off-road modes, namely wading, mud, sand, and snow, as well as 3 on-road modes, which are namely sport, eco, and comfort, which you control through this lovely swivel wheel. Now, it is missing a rock mode, which is available in the Jetour T2. Sand is the only mode that completely turns off traction control in the B30, which is precisely what you need when off-roading. You want to be able to climb over rocks and other obstacles without the system constantly cutting power. So in the absence of a true rock mode, I'll stick it into sand, as this is the closest to what we need for most of the obstacles. The B30 has a unibody chassis without any mechanical locking differentials or low-range transfer case. But it does come equipped with electronic limited slip assist, so we'll see how well that holds up against the technical monster that is HENOPS, because electronic systems usually don't work as well as mechanical systems off-road. Now, the guideline tire pressure for rocky terrain falls in between 1.5 and 1.9 bar, and currently all the tires are significantly above that. So I'll quickly deflate these to about 1.9 to 2 bars. Which admittedly is at the top end of the range, because I still need to drive the car back home and the channel unfortunately doesn't have a tire pump as yet.
A few moments later.
Now that all of the tires have been deflated, let's see how it'll handle this off-road terrain. And so far so good. I mean, these are highway terrain tires, but I think the deflating really goes a long way with grip. Otherwise, it would have just spun its wheels out of control over these rocks. This comes equipped with a 360-degree camera, which allows you to see what's happening in front of you. And it's a nice touch because at times you cannot precisely judge the terrain in front of you from inside the cabin. The B30 is equipped with hill descent control, which wasn't my favorite feature to be honest, because you can kind of feel it working part-time as it will grab the brakes every now and then. But it's not there for you all of the time. I mean, I still saw speeds as high as 20 kilometers per hour after activating it, which is too fast for a course as technical as Henops. And plenty could go wrong at those speeds. So I found myself having to manually brake down to about 8 kilometers per hour, which defeats the purpose of having hill descent control to begin with. The B30 has a water weighting depth of 600 millimeters, which is 100 millimeters less than the Jetour T2, but 600 millimeters is respectable for off-roading. And for context, if you were to place two high school 30 centimeter rulers vertically on top of one another, is the depth of the water that this can pass through. So I had absolutely no problem at all passing through the waters at Henops. The suspension travel from the McPherson and multi-link setup is rather limited because it's quite easy to get the wheels of this vehicle off the ground. Whereas something like a Suzuki Jimny would remain planted while passing through the same obstacles, giving you all the grip you need. But then again, this is not a full-blown off-roader, so I'm not too mad at that. Moving on to practicality, you get 1,496 liters worth of boot space with the second row of seats folded flat. And nowhere does the local brochure disclose what the boot capacity is with the second row of seats upright. Which is disingenuous if you think about it, because for daily use, that's the number we actually want to know. So I had to scratch around the internet and eventually I found that this was around 574 liters. Based on a publication in the Philippines. Comparatively, the Jetour T2 gets 580 liters, so the margins are quite thin. Nevertheless, the rear seats fold in a 60-40 split configuration, and you get a couple of grocery hooks. You get a 150-watt plug and a 12-volt socket. And under the boot floor, you will find a tire repair kit. Now, remember that Springbok camp chair that you saw earlier on? Well, because this is an adventure SUV, the parcel shelf doubles up as a camping table so that when you do go camping, you can have a lekker braai, sit around the table, and enjoy food and drinks with friends and family. So I had to bring one of our camp chairs from home to imagine myself doing just that. So let's just pretend there's some steaks on the braai and Richelieu with Coca-Cola on the table. And the tailgate is electric, just by the way, in case that wasn't already obvious. Overall, I'm very impressed with the off-roading capabilities of the B30, especially considering that it doesn't have any fancy mechanical locking differentials, and yet it can get through some pretty rough terrain. In the city is where these will spend most of their economic lives anyway, and you'll be pleased to know that this has all of the creature comforts you'll ever need. For starters, you've got side steps for easy access into the cabin. Additionally, they've fixed almost all of the issues I mentioned in my X55 review, because you now get two cup holders in front as opposed to just one in the X55. The biggest one is that you now get wireless Apple CarPlay as standard, which the X55 doesn't have, and honestly should have gotten from factory because it's still a relatively new car. But Android Auto has not been mentioned in the official press release, so sorry Android users. Not all the issues have been fixed though, because for instance, the hazard light button is still mounted on the ceiling of the vehicle, which at night you might be able to spot if you're lucky, but during the day it completely blends in with all the other buttons. And I'm not sure what the obsession is with mounting emergency buttons up here, because an emergency button is not a nice to have, and I cannot be looking all over the cabin when I'm facing an emergency. So when you do release the facelift, take this button and put it down here. You can even make it aluminium to blend in with the air vents. I promise you we will thank you and it will look good. Anyway, you get 6-way electrically adjustable black leather seats with orange stitching for the driver and front passenger. These are heated, ventilated, and come with memory function. Although these are quite comfortable, I still think that the X55 has nicer looking seats, but comment down below and let me know if you agree with me or not. Storage space is always plentiful with the Chinese because you get a decent sized cubby hole and more storage under the center armrest, which I wish was rubberized or cushioned, because as it is now, your keys will slide around and rattle while driving. But you can remove this first layer, which exposes an even bigger storage compartment, which is air conditioned, but again, also not rubberized. The gear selector is shift by wire, so you've got even more storage under the center console, which has a USB Type A and C port, as well as a 12-volt socket. You also get a ventilated wireless charger to keep your phone cool while charging. You get a panoramic sunroof with slide and tilt function, and a sunshade to keep the heat out of the cabin. Only grey roof lining is available across the range apparently, and at this price point, black roof lining would have definitely sealed the deal for me. Now the B30 isn't without its flaws though, just like any other car. For starters, there's a massive 14.6-inch infotainment touchscreen which, when connected to Apple CarPlay, takes up the entire display, including where your dual-zone climate control buttons would ordinarily be. So if you have the CarPlay interface on and want to change the temperature in the car, you will need to press the BAIC app, which takes you back to the native operating system. And then you can change the aircon temperature and all of the other settings as you so wish. But the resolution is crystal clear on both the infotainment system and on the 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster. At this point, I'm almost convinced that all of the Chinese manufacturers buy these displays from the same company and just add their own operating systems because they literally look the same. My other gripe is that this is called a B30 in South Africa, but then the dashboard trim has the name BJ30 on it, which is the vehicle's name in China. And I get it, manufacturers give cars different model names in different countries due to copyright restrictions, pronunciation considerations, and a myriad of other reasons, and that is completely fine. But surely this cannot be both a B30 and a BJ30 in the same country. To me, that just looks like an oversight, and my OCD alarm bells are going off. Moving on to the rear cabin, you've got a couple of grab handles which you don't get in front, oddly enough. I mean, the vehicle is the same height all around, so if you've already thought about doing it in the rear, what about the front? Anyway, you get a black leather bench with orange stitching just like the front, and a center armrest with 2 cup holders which are exposed. You get ISOFIX anchor points for your child seat, 6 airbags, and I'm yet to find an official NCAP safety rating for the B30, but if you've seen an official PDF NCAP safety report, you're more than welcome to share it in the comments. You get 2 air vents and 1 USB Type-C port. Rear legroom is very generous, and that is thanks to its 2.82 meter wheelbase, which is 20 millimeters longer than the Jetour T2's 2.8 meters. Although the T2 is also pretty good, and for reference, I am 1.78 meters tall or 5'10" for those who are in the Americas. And the nice thing about the rear cabin is that the seats fold completely flat and you can have yourself a 1.9 meter bed while you're out camping. And you can use the hooks under the sun visors to hang a projector screen and put on your favorite movie or series. And if you'd like to hear how the sound system performs, head over to my YouTube shorts. Not the very best from China, so if you're really into your music, that might be a deal breaker. Overall, the interior is of a high quality with parts such as the window switches and cruise control stalk being reminiscent of Mercedes-Benz. And that is due to the cross-shareholding that the two companies have in one another, which I spoke about at length in the X55 review. So do check it out if you haven't already. I'll leave a link in the description box below. Before we get to driving dynamics, we are still on the road to 20,000 subscribers. So if you're enjoying these videos, then please go ahead and smash the subscribe button to become a part of the family. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so that you don't miss a single one of our epic reviews. Welcome to the inside of the BAIC B30e, which uses the McPherson suspension up front with the multi-link setup in the rear, together with bi-color 19-inch alloys. So the cabin is an extremely comfortable place to be in. You sit high and mighty with good all-around visibility, and it soaks up all of the road imperfections. The suspension is equally as compliant when hammering it down a gravel road, as if it were built for this type of terrain. And that's because the B30 is engineered for extreme conditions, having undergone 4 million kilometers of strict real car testing. Now, what's not so clear about that claim is whether a single unit did the entire 4 million kilometers, or whether they're counting a number of cars to arrive at that number. But you can be rest assured that this has been properly tested. Additionally, you get a 7-year 200,000 kilometer warranty, an 8-year 150,000 kilometer high voltage warranty for the electric motors, and a 7-year 90,000 kilometer service plan. And now, because of the electrification, all 685 Newton meters of torque are available immediately. So I quite like how urgent it feels when you put your foot down. This comes with adaptive cruise control, which you operate through the stalk. But when the vehicle arrived, the stalk was not working. So to my surprise or dismay, I realized that the cruise control was turned off inside of the infotainment screen. So I turned it back on. And now, why would that be something you're able to completely disable within the infotainment? Because that's what the stalk is for, isn't it? To turn cruise control on and off. These screens will be the death of us one day, because what else are you going to be able to disable in the future? The indicator stalk. But other than those few qualms, this is a proper highway cruiser. It's quiet and relaxing at 120 kilometers per hour, and you can get pretty close to the manufacturer's claimed fuel consumption of 6.4 liters per 100 kilometers. Because the vehicle has achieved a long-run average consumption of 6.7 liters to the 100 over the past 6,000 kilometers. However, when I took the vehicle off-roading, it achieved a fuel consumption of 9.3 liters to the 100 for the day, so it all depends on how you're going to be using it. I had collected the vehicle with a full tank of petrol, and the instrument cluster said that it'll do 646 kilometers on the tank, based on its most recent average fuel consumption. So not quite the claimed 1,000 kilometers, but 646 on a tank is respectable for a car of this size. The top spec gets wheel arch lights and puddle lights as standard to increase visibility at night. And speaking of visibility, you've got LED tail lights and interactive automatic LED headlights, which auto dim and bright so that you do not dazzle traffic in front of you. You get a choice of 7 exterior paint colors to choose from, and our test unit is finished in mint green. Other highlight features include lane keep assist with blind spot monitoring, remote start, roof rails and acoustic glass for the HEV models for enhanced cabin insulation, and a brake towing capacity of 1.5 tons. Moving on to pricing and cost of ownership, the lineup gets 2 non-hybrid models and 2 hybrid models. The non-hybrid models both produce the same 138 kilowatts, which they send to the front wheels only, and kick off from 520,000 rands with the Elite variant. Above those two are the hybrid models, with the Hybrid Elite starting from 640,000 rands with 246 kilowatts being sent to the front wheels. The Hybrid Premium that we're in starts from 690,000 rands with 301 kilowatts being sent to all 4 wheels. And the nice thing about the hybrids is that the difference in price also carries a significant power bump with it, so you're not just paying more for just a trim level. On finance, the top spec Premium Adventure HEV will cost you 13,000 rands a month over 6 years at the current prime interest rate of 10.25% per annum. Insurance is risk profile dependent, and the cheapest quote I got was 2,100 rands. A full tank of petrol will cost you 1,400 rands at the current inland price of 95 octane for its 51-litre fuel tank, which would then bring your total cost of ownership to 16,500 rands. I think that the rugged, Defender lookalike stance of the Jetour T2 speaks to me a bit more, but the specification of the BAIC B30e is certainly undeniable. And it's locally assembled right here at home in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape, so it scores some brownie points for that. Although Jetour also has long-term plans to locally assemble the T2 as well. You are of course not limited to these two options, and if you're generally just looking for a mid-sized SUV around that price point, then you've got a plethora of options to choose from, like the GWM Tank 300, which has a proper ladder frame chassis. You've got the Haval H6, BYD C Line 5, and many more, although these are not off-roaders if that's worth anything to you. But do let me know in the comments what you're getting for around 700,000 rands. Thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.